Hmm. Guys, did that just happen? Did the Mets just have a comeback win in the year 2025? I mean, is this real life? Are we here? Like, apparently we are. And hey, listen, I ain't gonna complain. I'll take it. I'll take it. I'll take it. But holy shit. What a wild game that was. I mean, you talk about roller coaster of emotions. I think everyone as a Met fan who was watching this game, I think felt every single piece of emotion that it's scientifically possible to feel. There was anger, there was sadness, there was excitement, there was joy, a little bit of depression, especially at the start of the game. But I mean, just wow, 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 wow. How did they win that game, first of all? How did they win that game? Because let me tell you guys, when I tell you guys that when I hear David Peterson, September, Chicago Cubs in the same sentence, this is why I get PTSD because this game, it reminded me so much of that 2022 game where, and you guys remember 2022 coming down to the wire, the Mets and the Braves, of course, fighting for the division. The only difference was that at least the 2022 game was held at Citi Field. This one was at Wrigley Field, but David Pearson had a big start against the Cubs and completely shit his pants on the mound. And today, same thing pretty much happened. Now, look, I get it. The defense wasn't good in front of him, and we'll get into that even more because Jesus Christ, this team right now just doesn't want to play a complete game whatsoever. I mean, it's like they'll win a game, but it's like half of the team will piss you off. And today, I mean, look, I'm like 50-50 on this win with this team, right? Because the offense, great. Put up 9 runs, fantastic. The bullpen, apart from maybe Tyler Rogers, who was a bit iffy, but again, I think there's just more of Mendoza not putting Tyler Rogers in the best place to succeed. But bullpen was fantastic, and I got to give those guys a round of applause because after David Pearson absolutely shit his pants on the mound, and I'll pull up his final pitching line for you guys, and let me tell you, and you guys not gonna like this because it ain't good. It ain't good. David Pearson's final pitching line: inning and a third, 5 hits, 5 runs, 5 earned runs, 2 walks, 1 strikeout, 0 home runs. His ERA currently sits at a 4.22. And if you factor out the first half and you just look at the second half, yeah, it's not pretty. I believe David Pearson has something around an 8 ERA in the second half. Yeah, listen, not great from David Pearson, and I realize that this is not off-season talk, and we'll probably touch upon this in the next podcast that we do when me and Evan are both back with when me and Evan are both back with each other talking about this team. And I know it's even something that we've briefly touched upon. Even when you look at his last start against the Padres, how we don't necessarily trust them to get the ball to pitch a playoff game. And today's game, he backed it up because look, David Pearson was just flat out horrible. Like I mentioned, I mean, and like I said, I get that the defense did not help him, especially in the bottom of that first inning when David Pearson had 2 outs and he was able to get a fly ball to right field. And I believe they didn't call this an error, which I'm shocked if they didn't. I'm shocked if they didn't call an error. But let me just double check. Yeah, how they called Carlos Santana or how they scored that a double on the Juan Soto mystery in right field, I don't understand that. Listen, I get it was a windy day in Chicago, and we know that Chicago's the windy city. But I'm sorry, Juan Soto, you got to make that play, kid. And listen, I understand that Juan Soto has been excellent with the bat this year. Again, career highs in stolen bases, home runs, almost there, I believe, in terms of RBIs. Juan Soto's had a really good year offensively, and he's been relatively solid defensively as well. But these, or at least the last 2, or the last 3 games, the second game against the Nationals, and then this game here, bad defensive night by Juan Soto. Bad defensive night. Like I said, I get that it was windy, but sorry for me, you have to make that play. You have to make that play, and then obviously there was a couple, bad fielding plays in what I believe it was the 4th inning. Yeah, I believe it was the fourth inning. Jeff McNeil just with a couple horrible throws. I mean, the first one had a chance to turn the double play. He couldn't. And then, I mean, the sixth run that the Cubs scored, just he's able to field the ball well at second base, and then just total misthrow. Wasn't anywhere near Pete Alonso in that inning. And again, that caused the Cubs to score the sixth run in that inning. But I mean, listen, like I said, I know we have been very frustrated with the offense this year, and deservedly, because even though they've had multiple games where like this where they put up 9, 10 runs, we don't trust them, and rightfully so, because they are not able to back up on these games. We've seen them plenty of times have these type of games, and then the next two games, they go out there and they are unable to score any runs, and at most they put up 2, 3 runs. Like we just saw in the last series, and like what we talked about on the podcast today, which if you guys didn't see that, make sure you guys check that out. I went live and did the podcast today, breaking down the National Series and previewing, pretty much the last two series. This one, Chicago, and then the next one, the series finale or the season finale in Miami. But yeah, listen, I'll give credit where credit is due. The offense tonight was solid. A couple big home runs, especially from Brandon Nimmo and Francisco Alvarez, who had the game-winning home run today in the top of the eighth. At least this time, there was no Jacob Young to rob that. Pete Crow Armstrong could not jump over the poison ivy, and he could not secure that ball. But just and then like I said before, you got to give a massive round of applause to the bullpen, because like I said, when you only get an inning and a third from David Peterson, that automatically sets you back right away from the game. And like I said, the fact that he gave up 5 runs, it's like you're sitting there. It's like, really, Peterson? Like really? I mean, like I was so livid and I was so pissed off with Peterson at that point of the game after he came out. And listen, rightfully so. Listen, we've been critical of Mendoza a ton this year on this podcast and on this channel, but look, he made the right move. And I mean, it's not like he had any more of a choice, because the Mets are in a spot where they have to win all these games. So when you see Peterson starts that poorly, you have to go right to your bullpen. And the fact that this bullpen gave you 7 1/3 innings of work, and let's just see how many. Yes, 7 1/3, and they gave up 1 earned run and 2 runs, but the other run came on an error, which was the Jeff McNeil throwing error for the 6th run. But I mean, listen, this bullpen was good. I mean, Brazoban was able to eat enough innings. He went 2 2/3. Ryan Stanek gave you a full inning of shutout baseball. Gregory Soto gave you 2 1/3 inning of work. I thought he was taken out prematurely. We'll talk about more on that. Tyler Rogers came in. He was shaky, but again, we'll talk about more of that later. I believe that was just bad managing there by Mendy. And then Brooks Raley, of course, comes in, faces Pete Crow Armstrong, who's a tough at bat, even though he's been relatively poor in the second half of the year. He strikes him out, and then Edwin Sugar Diaz. Talk about clutch. Talk about balls of steel. And for a second, just to diverge of Edwin Diaz and his brilliance in today's game, today's game proved that Edwin Diaz should have been used in the second game of the National Series for 2 innings. Proved it. Now, listen, I'm not saying if it's not a guarantee that if he goes out there in that second inning of the National Series that he has another clean inning. Obviously, like I said, there's no guarantee because you have the ghost runner at second base. But at this time of the year, when you are this desperate for runs, it's all hands on deck, and we talk about this. Edwin Diaz is $102 million reliever / closer. He's one of the most reliable. He's one of the best reliever and closers of all baseball. You cannot baby him at this point, especially when you look at the breakdown of the second half. I mean, how much has Diaz really pitched in the second half? I mean, because there hasn't been a ton of save opportunities for him. There really hasn't. The Mets have lost a lot of games in the second half. And like we've seen, Diaz has not come into a lot of these games. So it just, again, it makes no sense to me why Diaz wasn't used in that second game for 2 innings. But today, Mendoza learned his lesson. And to be honest, like I mentioned with the fact that he had to pull David Peterson because he didn't have a choice, you really didn't have a choice with not using Edwin Diaz. I mean, look, I maybe would have managed it a little bit differently. I would have at least let Raley start the 8th inning because he only faced Pete Crow Armstrong for the last batter in the bottom of the 7th, and like I said, he struck him out. So and he only threw, I believe, like 5-6 pitches. So I would have at least used them to start the 8th inning, and then if there was a little bit of trouble, or if he got the first 2 outs and then you wanted to go with Diaz for the 4-out save, I would have done that. But look, like I said, I'll give Mendoza credit is due. He made the right move. He went to Diaz for 2 innings, and Edwin Diaz was just he was amazing. He hung his nuts on the Wrigley Field mound and in front of all those Cub fans. I mean, look at this line. 2 innings pitched, faced just 6 batters, faced the minimum amount of batters. 0 hits, 0 runs, 0 earned runs, no walks, 5 strikeouts on 6 batters. His ERA sits at 1.73. That was prime 2022 Edwin Diaz. The slider, electric. So much swing and miss on that slider. I mean, so much movement generated on the slider. And then that fastball, again, just pumping up 99, 100 like it's nothing. I mean, listen, there's a good chance next year that Edwin Diaz might not be here. And we'll obviously talk about them more when we get into the offseason and when we do our podcast there. But for now, while Edwin Diaz is on this team, guy is simply amazing. And I love Edwin Diaz. And listen, if this is his last year here, then thank you for everything. But we still have work to do. And if this team gets into the playoffs, and by any chance, if they somehow want to get things right and they want to somehow get into the playoffs and make a deep run, they're going to need Edwin Diaz to look like this. And like I said, he was simply fantastic. Simply the best, as Tina Turner once put it. Amazing song, by the way. But yeah, guys, I mean, that was the little quick short rant and little mini breakdown and preview of this game. But before we get into the actual play-by-play breakdown of this game, as always, make sure you guys leave a like and subscribe on the channel. We always appreciate your guys' support here on Mets Central, and we want to keep feeding you guys content for the rest of the year, and as well as the upcoming seasons in the upcoming years. Whether that be 2026, 2027, 2028, we want to be here for the long run, giving you guys this amazing content for this baseball team. And as always, make sure you guys hit the notification bell as well to let you guys know anytime we upload a video or go live here on the channel on Mets Central. But anyway, guys, now let's actually get into the actual game or the play-by-play breakdown. So, of course, on the mound for the Mets, it was David Peterson. Not pretty. And on the mound for the Chicago Cubs, it was Cade Horton. So, to start off this game right away, instant tone setter by Francisco Lindor. He hits a solo home run to left field to put the Mets up 1-0. Juan Soto then follows that up with a single. Pete Alonso would fly out. Brandon Nimmo would fly out. Juan Soto would steal. Sorry, guys, he would steal second base to have his 36th stolen base of the year. So Soto is quickly edging up to 40-40. Let's see if he can achieve it over the last 5 games of the year. And then Mark Vientos strikes out to end that inning. So just the one home run, or just the one run there for the Mets, courtesy of a Lindor walk or leadoff home run. Bottom of the first. And this is where the not pretty stuff would start to happen, because Nico Hoerner would lead off the inning with a leadoff single. Ian Happ would strike out. Seiya Suzuki would ground out. Carson Kelly walks. He then steals second base, and then this is just the poor play here by Juan Soto, where, and again, I don't know how they didn't rule this an error. I get that it was windy again, but for Juan Soto, he has to be better. He has to make that play. But Carlos Santana puts a double into right field. Soto was not able to catch it, so that drives in both Nico Hoerner and Carson Kelly, and the Chicago Cubs quickly jump out to a 2-1 lead. Thankfully, no more damage would be done there, as Dansby Swanson would ground out. We move on to the top of the second, nothing going there for the Mets. A quick 1-2-3 inning there by Cade Horton. We then move on to the bottom of the second, and again, another terrible inning here by David Peterson. And of course, the one thing or a couple things you don't do as a starting pitcher in Major League Baseball, you never walk the leadoff guy. And he walks 40-year-old Justin Turner to lead off that inning. Matt Shaw then follows it up with a single. So you have first and second there with no outs at that point. Pete Crow Armstrong then hits a sacrifice bunt to move the runners over. Nico Hoerner then hits a single. Justin Turner comes around to put the Cubs up 3-1. Ian Happ then hits a double, and the Cubs extend their lead to 5-1. And at that point, I was fully pissed with David Peterson, and I was over his bullshit. And like I said, Mendoza makes the right move, and he had to make the move at that point, because you just can't keep trotting at David Peterson if he's going to pitch soft toss BP like that. But brings in Huascar Brosman, and Huascar Brosman, like I mentioned before in his final line, he would just give the Mets so much needed length out of the bullpen. Gets Seiya Suzuki to strike out and gets Carson Kelly to ground out to end that inning. We then move on to the top of the third. Again, another 1-2-3 inning there by Cade Horton. The Mets could not get anything going there offensively. Bottom of the third, there'll be a pinch hitter. Michael Busch replaces Carl Santana. Thankfully, though, Brazaban's able to get multiple ground outs here. Michael Busch and Dansby Swanson, and then is able to get Justin Turner to ground out as well. So good work there by Brazaban. Top of the fourth, weird change here. I don't exactly know why the Cubs did it. Maybe it's to preserve Cade Horton for the playoffs because, I mean, the Cubs already have their spot locked up, and I believe they already have the first wildcard spot locked up. If I do believe so, so they probably do want to, like I said, keep Cade Horton fresh for the playoffs, but they take him out after a very good start. Apart from that Lindor home run, they bring in Michael Soroka, and then again, Soroka just a nice, easy inning of work for him. Gets Pete Alonso to strike out, gets Brandon Nimmo to ground out. Mark Vientos then hits a single, and then Brett Beatty grounds out to end that inning. We then move on to the top of the fourth. Matt Shaw strikes out. Pete Armstrong would hit a single. Nico Horner would ground into a force out, and then this was the bad throwing error, the second bad throwing error by Jeff McNeil, because the Nico Horner force out really should have been a double play. Lindor, or was it? Oh no, Beatty fielded it to third base, got it over to McNeil quickly, and McNeil just a poor throw over to Pete Alonso, and then Ian Happ hits a ground ball to second base. McNeil's able to field it cleanly, but just poor throw over to Pete Alonso. Just again another poor fielding error. Mets offense, the Mets defense and fundamentals has just been terrible over these last couple games. So that brings another run. The Cubs extend their lead to 6-1. Thankfully, though, no more damage will be done as Seiya Suzuki hits into a force out to end the inning. Top of the fifth, the Mets would get a run or a couple runs back here in this inning. Starling Marte leads off the inning with a single. Jeff McNeil grounds into a pop out, and then, like the Mets had a couple errors and the Cubs were able to capitalize it, the Cubs here have a bad error here by Dansby Swanson. Francisco Alvarez hits a bit of a chopper there to Alvarez, or he hits a bit of a chopper there to Dansby Swanson. He tries to field it with one hand. It jumps over his glove, goes into the outfield, and Marte is able to move up a base, and Francisco Alvarez he's able to reach first base safely. Francisco Lindor then hits into a ground out that allows Starling Marte to score. So the Mets cut the lead down to 6-2. Before that, Marte was able to move on third on that error. But like I said, Lindor grounds out, brings in another run to cut the lead to 6-2. Juan Soto would then walk, and then Pete Alonso hits a single into right field to bring in another run. So the Mets cut the lead down to 6-3. Taylor Rogers, the brother of Tyler Rogers, who the Mets acquired at the trade deadline, comes in to replace Michael Soroka. And then the first batter, we talked about in the podcast how Brandon Nimmo had a dreadful series against the Nationals, had multiple times to break those games open, and even had a chance in the second game to walk off the game in the bottom of the ninth. But thankfully, he comes through with a big 3-run home run into right field, and just like that, his 25th home run of the year. And like I said, just like that, the Mets tie up the game to 6-6, and they are right back in this ball game. Unfortunately, though, Mark Vientos flies out to end the inning. We then move on to the bottom of the fifth. Ryan Stanek comes in, and like I said before, very good work here by Ryan Stanek, a shutout inning by him. Gets Carson Kelly to ground out. Michael Busch walks, but gets Dansby Swanson to fly out and Justin Turner to strike out. We then move on to the top of the sixth. Brett Beatty would be called in on strikes. Marte would ground out. So with 2 outs, it looked dim for the Mets in this inning, but thankfully a nice 2-out rally would be started here by Jeff McNeil, who hits a ball down the right field line. So kind of avenges his mistake that he made back in the fourth inning. Then a pitching change here by the Cubs as Drew Pomeranz comes in to replace Taylor Rogers. Francisco Alvarez walks, and then Francisco Lindor hits a single up the middle to drive in Jeff McNeil and puts the Mets up 7-6. And then Juan Soto will be called in on strikes to end the inning. We then move on to the bottom of the sixth. Gregory Soto comes in to replace Ryan Stanek. And Matt Shaw strikes out, gets Pete Armstrong to line out, and then Nico Horner hits a single. And I didn't agree with this move personally, and it came back to kind of bite the Mets. But to me, I would have let Gregory Soto finish that inning, or at least I would have let him have one more batter against Ian Happ. To me, I didn't agree with bringing in Tyler Rogers because it's the same thing that we always say, guys, here on the channel. You have to put Tyler Rogers in the best position to succeed. And we brought it up many times on here. We know that we see the best version of Tyler Rogers when he's brought in out of the bullpen with no one on base. So for me, and like I said, relatively, because Gregory Soto got the first 2 guys out relatively quickly, and the single that Nico Horner hit, it wasn't even a hard-hitted ball either. It was just a little blooper at the right field, and Juan Soto just couldn't get to it. So for me, like I said, I didn't agree with bringing in Tyler Rogers there, and again, comes back to bite him because Ian Walk or Ian Happ walks, and then Seiya Suzuki hits a single up the middle to tie up the game at 7-7. Thankfully, Carson Kelly grounds out, so Tyler Rogers is able to get out of the inning. Top of the 7th, Andrew Kittredge comes in to replace Drew Pomeranz. The Mets don't get anything going in that inning. We then move on to the bottom of the 7th. Michael Busch grounds out. Dansby Swanson grounds out. Justin Turner would hit a single. There would then be a pinch runner. Kevin Alcantara comes in to replace Justin Turner. He steals second base. Matt Shaw walks, and then Brooks Raley comes in to replace Tyler Rogers. And like I said before, he comes in, faces his only batter of the game, and gets Pete Crow Armstrong to strike out to end that inning and potentially end the big rally there for the Cubs in the bottom of the 7th. We then move on to the top of the 8th. Caleb Thielbar comes in to replace Andrew Kittredge. Brett Baty leads off that inning with a single. Luis Acuna will come into pinch run for him. Marte would attempt a bunt, and poor bunt there. He pops out. Just again, I don't get why you're bunting there. You're already pinch ran with Acuna, or I'm sorry, you're like I said, you already brought in Luis Acuna to pinch run. Just steal a base with him. Like, I don't understand why you're trying to bunt with Marte. Like, to me, again, that just didn't make any sense there. And bizarre decision there, but from whoever that was, whether it was from Mendoza or from Marte himself. But Jeff McNeil lined out. Luis Acuna then stole second base, and then Francisco Alvarez wasn't robbed of a home run this time. Because he parks that ball. He got a fastball right down the middle, low in the zone, and parked that ball right into center field, right over the poison ivy. And he gives the Mets a massive 9-7 lead there in the bottom of the 7th. And then Francisco Lindor will pop out to end that inning. We then move on to the bottom of the 8th. Acuna reigns in the game. Nimmo moves over to left field. Jose Siri comes into center field. Edwin Diaz comes in to replace Brooks Raley, like I mentioned. Edwin Diaz just absolutely fantastic. Gets Nico Horner to strike out, strikes out Ian Happ, gets Seiya Suzuki to line out. The Mets don't get anything going there in the top of the 9th. Jordan Wicks comes in out of the Chicago Cubs bullpen. Other than a Brandon Nimmo single, Mets aren't able to generate anything in that inning. And then the bottom of the 9th, again, nice, easy 1-2-3 inning. Gets Carson, or not even just easy, but retires the side Edwin Diaz, strikes out Carson Kelly, strikes out Michael Busch, and then sits down Dansby Swanson on strikes. And that's how the Mets won this ball game. Just like I said, a crazy game. I mean, if every Mets fan who was watching this game, like I mentioned at the start of this post-game show, you felt every single piece of emotion because this was just a wild game. And it's like, and it's like you would think to yourself, right? If the Mets were going to win any of these games late in the year, you would probably assume it'd be some kind of crazy roller coaster game like this. And this is what we got. But look, importantly, like I mentioned, you get a big win here. You thankfully get some massive help there by the Pittsburgh Pirates. They're able to beat the Cincinnati Reds 4-2, and you're also getting some help right now from the Dodgers as well. They're currently beating the Diamondbacks 4-0 in the bottom of the 7th. But look, Mets took care of business. They got some help. Best thing, listen, the thing that they got to do, and we talked about this plenty of times on this podcast and on the show, you got to capitalize on this because, cool, you win this game, fine. But if you go out there and lose the next game of the series, this win and this comeback win, it doesn't mean anything. It's like we talked about the National Series. Cool, they won that first game, and they were able to come back from a 4-1 deficit, but they dropped the next 2 games, didn't mean anything. So, listen, they're back in control now. They have, like I said, they hold a 1-game lead over the final wildcard spot. Like I said, the Reds still hold the tiebreaker spot, so the Mets have to finish with a better record over the Reds if they want to get into the final playoff spot. And like I said, you control your own destiny again. You go out there, you win the games you have to, and the Reds drop 1 or 2 more games here and there, you're in. If not, you're going home, and a long off season is going to be ahead for this team. I mean, realistically, even if they do make the playoffs, and I don't want to be a deadbeat down here, but even if they do make the playoffs, and they were to get bounced early in the playoffs in the wild card against the Dodgers, like let's just say as an example, there still, in my opinion, needs to be massive changes to the roster. But obviously, we'll get there when we get there. There's still 5 more games left. 2 more massive games against the Cubs, and then 3 more in Miami to finish the season off. But yeah, I mean, tomorrow, look, you got Jonah Tong on the mound. He's looking to capitalize off a good start after a good rebound start against the Padres, and you have Matthew Boyd on the mound for the Cubs. A nice little soft tossing lefty. So Mets have to take advantage there. I mean, we know that typically they're not great at hitting soft tossing pitchers. So, I mean, let's see if this offense can actually rebound, build off this game, and replicate this type of game that they put up today, which I know we say that a lot, but I'm just saying more out of hope than actually out of belief, because really, do I believe in this team? Not really, but if they get in, they get in. We'll see. We'll see. And then, of course, the final game, like I mentioned before, you got Nolan McLean on the mound for the Mets, and then Shota Imanaga on the mound for the Chicago Cubs. But yeah, guys, like I mentioned before, just absolutely crazy game, back and forth. And then, like I said, also tomorrow the game's on ESPN at 8:05, so a little bit of a later start. But yeah, I mean, before we get out of here, just gonna go through your guys' comments before I get out of here. Pantry what is going up. Okay, impressive win, very impressive. But as usual, can we keep it up? Still not believing yet, but there is hope. Time to send Peterson to the pen. Dude is awful and unreliable. 100% agree with everything you said. Yeah, I mean, listen, that's the big thing. Like I just brought up, can this team replicate this? Can they carry it over to the next game? That's been a question that we've been asking of this team the whole year, and they really haven't been able to do that. Listen, I guess it's always better to do it late than never, but we, like for me, like what you said, we have to see it to believe it. And this is something that Evan also says all the time as well. But yeah, Peterson, he has to go to the pen, because I'm sorry. I don't trust him at all. I don't. And like I said, in the off season, when we do our podcast, there's going to be a big discussion around what the Mets should do with David Peterson, and how, David Stearns goes out and handles that situation, because not sure if you could bring it back. I am not sure. Pablo, what is going on? Wow, what a win. 100%. Brian, David Pierce cannot make the starting game 162. Yeah, absolutely not. Yeah, and he's scheduled to make that start. And we all know what happened in his last start when he faced the Marlins. I don't know if any of you, I mean, I'm sure you guys remember, but I don't know if I want to bring up bad memories, but 8 runs in the first 2 innings. Yeah, not pretty. And like you said, Brian, he can't pitch in that game. They're gonna have to, find a way to either move somebody up, or possibly do a tag team in that game. But yeah, Peterson cannot start game 162, 100%. Mendoza is still a buffoon at what's going on, Ray. Yeah. I mean, listen, I thought for the most part he had an okay game. There's still some decisions I didn't agree with, like what's called going to Tyler Rogers and pulling Gregory Soto after only facing 3 batters. That I didn't agree with. But yeah, I mean, look, Mendoza, like I said before, and we've talked about it before here, he still had way more bad games and way more bad errors than he has good games and good errors. So, like I said, this game ain't going to change it. So, but yeah, I mean, we'll see what happens. We will definitely see what happens. Gotta love the pets from Evan. Yes, absolutely. Never a tough day in Pets land. That is what some people do say to us, even though we know that's not exactly the case. But it is what it is. And like Evan, hopefully he recovers from his sickness. I know he's currently on LTIR right now, resting up. So get better, my guy. Get better, my guy, because we need you back here. Pablo again. I still don't have hope, but this is a nice plot twist. I mean, listen. I'll just say this. I don't know if the Mets are going to make the playoffs, but they're going to find a way to somehow make this interesting, whether they do make it or they don't make it. Because like we know about this Mets team and this franchise, and we even seen it a ton of this year with the with what's it called, the offensive teases late in games where they get a couple base runners on and they're still not able to come across and win the game. It would not shock me if this is going to come down to game 162 to determine whether or not they make the playoffs, because this team and this franchise just loves to make things interesting and loves to make things dramatic. So I would not be surprised by that. And God, if this season and the playoffs go down to a final game 162 against the Marlins, it's going to be so nerve-wracking. It's going to be so nerve-wracking. I mean, but I mean, yeah, like I said, I would not be fully surprised if that happened. But we will see. Ray, again, David Pearson got his all-star nod, then said peace out. Yeah, 100%. It definitely does feel like that, because he's been a totally different pitcher. Ray, again, Rogers cannot pitch with inherited runners, 100%. And that's something that me and Evan have constantly said since the Mets have traded for him. But for some reason, Carlos Mendoza does not agree. And for some reason, he keeps making that same mistake, and he doesn't learn from it, which, again, not surprising from Mendoza, because he keeps making the same mistakes over and over and over again. And that's just his thing. But yeah. Pablo, again, this felt like the never die 2024 playoff Mets 100%. This team actually fought back, and it was actually nice to see them actually, fight back for once. But yeah, a lot of guys a lot of people in the comment section today. So guys, like I said, thank you for your guys' support, and keep sending these comments in, because listen, as long as you guys keep commenting, I'll be here and I'll be live and I'll keep talking to you guys and interacting with you guys. I got nothing to do tonight. So yeah, let's do this. Nothing better than talking sports with you guys. Nothing better. Whether it's baseball, whether you guys are hockey fans and Ranger fans, like I said, make sure you guys subscribe to Ranger Central as well, because hockey season started, and the Rangers, even though it was preseason, they had their typical collapse in their game against the Bruins today. But yeah, more on that, and subscribe to Ranger Central, because Evan does a great job on there. And we love especially talking baseball, we love talking hockey as well. So yeah. Pantry's Diaz was freaking electric. Yup. And then that slider to Carson Kelly was just disgusting. Two Cats, what is going on? What a game. Pirates saved the Mets tonight. It's back in their hands 100%. And it's all down to them. Like I said, you win your games, you're in. If you don't, you're going home. Simple as that. Pablo, again, Diaz was hot. We should have extended him, or we should have extended him more like this from time to time, especially when the bullpen was shaky. Yeah, 100%. I get why they didn't want to do it a little, or like a couple months earlier, just because you don't want to completely burn Diaz out. I do agree. It's just, for me though, like I said, if you were going to use him for 2 innings today, which they did, why didn't you just use him for 2 innings against the Nationals? Like, to me, it just didn't make sense. Like, and again, we stated this before, but he really hasn't been used a lot over the last couple months. And you had an off day yesterday, so you could have used him for 2 innings in that second game against the Nationals, and then again, you could have used him for 2 innings today. So, and like I said, okay, so you have 5 more games left of this year, and then if this team does make the postseason, you're going to have a lot of off days come postseason time. So, let's just say if you do get past the wild card game and you get to the NLDS, you're going to have off days to help you maneuver around your bullpen and to help keep them rested. So it's just that decision today. It really just frustrated the point that I brought up on the podcast today, and like what Evan brought up when he was doing his post game stream for that second Nationals game. Two Cats, again, I just wish they could build off a win like this. Haven't done it the entire year. 100%. And like we've been saying, we have to see it to believe it. As of now, the Dodgers are leading the D-backs 4-0 top of the 7th. Yep, like I said before. Soto threw strikes. Rogers didn't. Bad move taking out Soto. Yeah, 100% right. Like I said, it just didn't make sense. Now, if Soto started to lose control of the zone and you had to take him out, then I fully agree with taking out Soto. But like I said, he got the first 2 guys out fairly quickly. The hit that he gave up, it was a soft liner into the outfield. Like, to me, there was no rush to pull Soto in that spot. And even if you did want to pull Soto, and I know he got a big crucial out on Pico Armstrong later in the game, but to me, you just should have just went to Brooks Raley at that point. Because again, Tyler Rogers is not good with inherited runners. So yeah, to me, it just didn't make sense. Turbo, what is going up, my man? If anyone doesn't know Turbo, follow this guy. The guy is one of the most funniest motherfuckers on YouTube I've ever watched and listened to. And I know, Turbo, you said you're coming back. You're making your YouTube return, and I hope so it's pretty soon, because I was watching some of your old stuff a couple weeks ago. You got some funny stuff on your channel, man. So yeah, keep up the good work. Like talking about with Evan on Ranger Central and with us here on Met Central. Subscribe to all of us, especially with Evan on Ranger Central. Does a great job, and subscribe to Turbo as well. Guy's fucking hilarious, and a big Mets fan as well. Two Cats again. If they tease all the way to game 162, I will go jump off from the top of the Citi Field scoreboard. It feels like that sometimes, man. It really does feel like that sometimes. Pantries again, man. I love Alvey. What a beast. Never doubted that kid ever, even when he got sent down. I mean, listen, we all knew Francisco Alvarez had this in his back pocket. It was just whether a certain someone like a certain hitting coach would have just let him actually, use his actual swing. But thankfully, JP Arancia, who was the hitting coach at Syracuse, Alvey went down there. He got him right, and he hasn't looked back since. And let's not forget, he's still doing this with fucking broken fingers. So, I mean, listen, we all know Alvey's got talent. It's just whether the Mets use him in the best spots and coach him to get the best out of his talent. We all know the kid's good. And he's got potential. Giovanni, what is going on? I don't want to see David Pierce on this team. Yeah, listen, I can't argue with that. Especially right now. Two Cats again, just make the playoffs and everything resets. We all forget about the first 162. Yeah, no, listen, I do agree with that point, but it's also like what Evans brought up before, and I've even briefly touched upon it as well. Like, it's true, everything does reset after game 162 and when you make the playoffs, but it's very hard to just flip a switch and go from playing poor baseball for 162 games to automatically just going and playing very good, like, contending baseball for the playoffs. Like, it's very hard to flip that switch. I mean, the Mets are playing probably as worst of defensive baseballs as I've ever seen them play, especially in the Steve Cohen era. So, I mean, listen, can they go into the playoffs and automatically flip that switch? I'm not sure they can. I mean, listen, if they do, great. I'm not going to complain, but it's just like for me, all the time, and we've said this with the Rangers over the past couple of years. It's like the regular season. The reason why it's important is because that's where you build your good. That's where you build your good tendencies, and that's where you become a consistent team. And like I said, it's hard to just flip that switch come the first game of the playoffs. Listen, like I said, if it does happen, cool. But I'm not sitting here and being confident and hoping on that, or I'm hoping that that's the case. But like I said, I'm not going to put all my hopes and dreams on that per se, if I'm going to put it that way. Jack Vellon, what is going on? I don't believe I've ever seen you in the channel, Jack, or in the chat. So if not, welcome to the channel. And like I said, we welcome everyone here that's new, and keep supporting us, and keep posting comments in the comment section as well. Making the playoffs is just to avoid the embarrassment of the collapse. This team isn't built to go on a deep run, and it's been that way since June. So, listen, I can't argue with that. You're right. I mean, you're right. This team hasn't played good baseball since June. And listen, like I said, if they make the playoffs, cool. But like I said, I don't know, and I don't think that they're good enough to make a deep run. But listen, like what Two Cats said, when you make the playoffs, everything resets. But as I said before, also, is the team going to be able to switch and become a good fundamental team all of a sudden? That remains to be seen, and I have my doubts about that. Two Cats again. Mendoza does a few things. Has a triple chin as he stares at the camera with crossed arms and creepy blue eyes. And two, he blows games consistently with poor managerial decisions. Can't argue with that. I can't argue with that. Two Cats. That's a funny comment. Again, Two Cats. So nice of Rogers to switch teams mid-game helps come back. Hey, which is the correct Rogers. Brent, what is going on? Dansby Swanson on one play. That is like our entire season, but perhaps this will be our turning point. I mean, listen, I hope, but there's been so many plays and so many games where we said, oh, maybe this is finally the turning point, and then it doesn't end up being it. Listen, like I said, better late than never. Maybe this is the turning point, but I'm not gonna, have my hopes and dreams on that. If it happens, it happens, but we'll see. Brent again, I was prepared to need to take my meds to be able to sleep after losing tonight. Guess what? Now I need my meds to sleep all day. Like I said, it was a crazy up and down roller coaster game. Everyone felt the emotions of this game. Giovanni again, I don't want to see Senga, Manaea, Peterson, and Holmes on this team next year. Trade them ASAP. Well, Giovanni, I know this is off-season talk, but I have some bad news. All those four guys are not going to be traded. You're going to have to deal with some of these guys. Now, I do believe some of these guys will be moved, but I do believe Manaea will be moved just because he still has 2 more years left at $25 million. And if he does get elbow surgery, and especially coming off this year, I don't think anyone's going to trade for him. And I don't think the Mets are going to trade Clay Holmes either. I think, and we'll talk about this more after, we finish and wrap up the season, and when we do like certain like player grade stuff. I don't think Clay Holmes has had that bad of a season. Now, listen, I know that some people might disagree, but I think there's outside circumstances that show that Holmes hasn't had, or he hasn't had a bad year. I think, listen, he hasn't been great, but I think for what he's being paid, for what his role was supposed to be, which was a depth starter, a 5 guy, and the fact that he's making $12.5 million, I don't think Holmes has been that bad. So for me, like I said, I think Manaea and Holmes are going to be here. I think there is a chance that Senga gets traded if a team is willing to take on the remaining of his 2-year deal. And I think there's a good shot Peterson might get traded as well. So you might get your hopes on 2 out of the 4 of those guys, but all 4 of those guys, I don't see them moving all 4 of them. I just don't see it happen. Listen, I know that next year they're going to have Sproat. What's it called? Jesus, I'm blanking on names all of a sudden. They're gonna have Sproat. They're gonna have Scott, who's coming back from Tommy John surgery, and then they're going to have McLean, and they're gonna have Tong. So, but you do need depth as well. And listen, injuries are gonna happen too. Listen, maybe the Mets bring back Griffin Canning. I don't know. We'll see. We will see. But like I said, we still have some time before the offseason, and we have some time before we get into those talks. Brent, again, I was super impressed by Brosman tonight. I'm wondering thoughts on having Brosman as a multi-inning opener. I mean, the Mets could do that. I mean, like, I forgot who brought it up earlier that they said they didn't want to see Diaz pitch one game one. Yeah, it was Brian. They didn't want to see Peterson pitch game 162. And listen, maybe the Mets use Brosman as an opener. Who knows? We will maybe see. Giovanni, love your podcast and your take on the team. Mets have a lot of good podcasts there, but I love my good friend Tyler from NYM. I hope you can collab one day. He is an awesome guy. Yeah. Listen, definitely. I mean, and once again, thank you for your support, Giovanni. We greatly appreciate it here, both me and Evan. And yeah, listen, I'm a big fan of Wardy too. He does, he has great content as well. Listen, maybe that's something I'm gonna have to ask Evan. We'll have to get together and maybe DM Wardy over Twitter and see if we can get something together as a collab. I know we've done collabs with Carson on Mets Weekly, and those have been great shows. And I know you guys probably enjoy our show and his show, and when we do those collabs. But yeah, I'm definitely open to doing more collabs with other Mets YouTubers. Because like I said, I love talking baseball. And just I love talking sports in general. Obviously, I went to college and I got a degree in communications because I want to get a job in sports media and do this kind of work. So yeah, I mean, listen, I'm fully open to it. And let's see if maybe that can happen. Two cats. Clay Holmes overall has been most consistent, believe it or not, even though he was 4 to 5 innings. Never has had a ridiculous bad stretch like the rest. Yeah, 100%, 100%. It's just the It's sometimes he has those bad outings and like the short outings per se, like you mentioned, where it's only 4 or 5 innings, and the other stuff with Holmes that kind of frustrates me. And you kind of hope that going into year 2 and year 3 of that contract, when he has more experience as a starter, you hope that he starts to incorporate more of his arsenal, because you've seen in the starts where Clay Holmes has started, when he incorporates more of his arsenal, you start to see a better Clay Holmes. So yeah, listen, like I said, I don't believe Holmes has been that bad though this year. I believe he's actually had a solid year, but that's my opinion, and other people may disagree. And listen, you're entitled to your own opinion. Louis Duran, I don't believe I've ever seen you in here either. So if not, welcome to the channel. And if you have anything to say in the comments, like you said here, keep on commenting. As I said, we greatly appreciate all your guys' support here on Met Central. If the Mets make it to the wild card and beat the Dodgers, we're going to get it done against Philly. I see us facing the Cubs for a pennant, hopefully. Little repeat of 2015. I mean, look, that's still long in the future because, I mean, first we got to make the playoffs. That's not even a guarantee. I mean, then the Dodgers, that's a tough matchup in the wild card. And then Phillies, I know we've had their number at Citi Field, but like last year, those first 2 games, if they were to make it, they'd be at Citizens Bank Park. So, and listen, the Phillies are a good team too. So, a lot of work before we get to that point, but listen, if the Mets get back to the NLCS, I certainly will not complain. Do I think they will? That's another discussion. I'm not betting on it, but we will see. But first, you got to get in. Pantries, Holmes has been good. Yes, he can go deep into innings, but you have to be patient. He is a 3-year project, and so far, the first year has been a huge. Yeah, I mean, listen, he's had his ups and downs in year 1, which I think everyone fully expected. Like, if you were at least being realistic with Clay Holmes, because I'm sure there was a ton of people that just wanted to see him be the starter where he's going 7 innings consistently. And listen, while I hope that he maybe would have been a little bit further down the line in terms of his starting pitching development, I still think where he's at, I think it's decent enough. And like I said, hopefully next year and then the final year of that 3-year contract, hopefully you start to see like a better version of the starting pitching version of David Peterson. I mean, not David Peterson, Clay Holmes. If not, then there's a discussion to be had, and maybe the Mets look to move him in his contract. But at this point, I thought the first year has been relatively good enough. We'll see what happens in year 2. Brent, again, only Mendoza moved tonight that I was really critical of was leaving Pearson in after leadoff walk in the second. I was also not sure how I felt bringing Acuna to pinch run, especially after Marte. Yeah, no. See, okay, like I kind of understand why Mendoza wanted, or at least left Pearson after the leadoff walk, because you only got one inning of work out of him, and I know that you just had an off day with the bullpen, but you kind of maybe want to preserve the bullpen a little bit. You maybe wanted to stretch out 2, 3, 4 innings out of Peterson before you went to the bullpen. But in that spot where he was, where he only pitched an inning and a third, and he only gave up 5 runs. You had to be aggressive, and at that point, move to the bullpen. So listen, it is what it is. It sucks that Pearson didn't have it. And then with the Acuna thing, listen, the thing with Acuna that I didn't like is if you're gonna bring him in, send him to steal right away. Like there's no reason to wait until there's 2 outs. And look, thankfully it worked out because Alvarez ended up hitting a home run in the bot or yeah in the what was it called in the top of the 8th inning. But like I said, if you're gonna bring in Acuna, just let him pinch run right away. But yeah, I mean. Yeah, like I said, like that I don't agree with that. And then also the Marte bunt, that was dumb. I don't agree with that either. Could not bunt, but Alvarez made that easy to forget. I mean, listen, I'm still not over the fact that Alvarez didn't bunt in that second game, but he did make it. He did make up for a little. He didn't make up for it a little bit with that home run today. You're right. We need to focus on making it first. Yeah, yeah. Listen, once we make it, then we can start having those discussions. But we still got 5 more games left of the season, obviously. And at this point, I'm not even looking at 5 games. I'm just saying to take it game by game. And tomorrow, like I said, big game tomorrow, 8:05. Tong versus Boyd on the mound. Got to win that game. Got to win that game, win the series. And realistically, because you lost the National Series, you got to sweep this Cubs series. I'm sorry. Listen, there's even a discussion that the Mets might have to sweep this Cubs series and the Marlins series just to get into the playoffs. So, listen, as of right now, you just got to take it game by game. And then 2 Cats 2015-16 MLB playoffs was the she good times when Phillies and Braves were bad. Playoffs had Cubs, Giants, Cardinals, Dodgers, Mets, nostalgic. Yeah, absolutely. How many games do we need to clinch? I mean, it depends because right now the Mets currently have a 1-game lead over the Cardinals. Over the Reds. The only difference is the Reds hold the tiebreaker over the Cincinnati Reds. So if the Reds and the Mets end up with the same record, the Reds would get into the playoffs. So the Mets simply just have to finish one. They have to win one more game than the Reds to get in. So listen, and that's really going to depend on how many more games the Reds lose to determine how many more wins that the Mets need. So we'll see what happens. Obviously, if the Reds win the rest of their games, Mets basically got to win all 5, or not basically, they have to win all 5 of the remaining of their games. So yeah, it's just based on how many games the Reds lose. And like I said, the Mets just have to take care of their own business. Giovanni, if you guys had your choice to get rid of the young guys right now between Vientos, Beatty, Acuna, and Mauricio, who would you choose to move out for the better of the season if you were the Mets GM? I mean, for the better of the season right now, it probably have to be Mauricio, right? Because Mauricio ain't even playing. Like, sure, he's been used occasionally as a pinch runner, as a pinch hitter, and occasionally for late game defense. But when was the last time Mauricio even started a game? Like at least with Vientos, like sure he has the capability to be he has the ability to be streaky, especially this year. But he has come up with clutch hits. Beatty has had a relatively good season, even though he started this season off horribly. And Acuna's not great, but at least he offers you good defense and speed off the bench. Like listen, I get that Mauricio's a decent fielder and has, or not even decent speed because he's not really fast either. And I know that's he was coming off the injury with tearing his ACL a couple years ago, but yeah, Mauricio just really doesn't have a spot right now on this team. So for me, I'd say probably Mauricio. Brent again, from my view, Pearson body language did not look good, which is why I thought the hook on Pearson would be better in terms of shorter. Okay, yeah, listen, I fully agree with that point. I just think for Mendoza, he wanted to get a little bit more length out of Peterson and not just pull him after an inning. But I do agree with you from that viewpoint. And then FYI, my could not bunt comment was on the previous comment. Alvarez homer allowed me to forget. Oh, Marte's bunt. Okay, yeah, no, yeah, I agree with that. I mean, it does apply to the Alvarez bunt, and or lack of not bunting in that situation in the same in the National Series. But yeah, the most important thing is the Mets got this win, and tomorrow, like I said, you got to take it game by game. Tomorrow is a huge game, and they have to win tomorrow. Like I said, Tong versus Boyd, 8:05 on ESPN. Mets got to win this game. And one more from Giovanni before I get out of here. Are there any free agent pitchers that you were interested in signing this offseason? To be honest, I haven't looked that much into this year's free agency. So And I'm sure we'll talk about that more, Giovanni, as me and Evan after the season when we do our as we do our off-season podcast. So make sure you, like I said, you make sure you guys have your notifications on for that whenever we get to that point and we have those podcasts. But we'll have plenty of those discussions when we get to the off-season. But for now, like I said, gotta win tomorrow, and we'll see what happens with the Reds as well. But anyway, guys, that's gonna be it for me. Like I said, make sure you guys leave a like and subscribe on the channel. We always appreciate you guys' support here on Mets Central, and make sure you guys hit the notification bell as well to let you guys know anytime we upload a video or go live on the channel. But yeah, that's gonna be it from me. See you guys tomorrow. Let's go Mets, baby. Peace.